They're talking about all these different attacks. So, oh my God, what would happen if a nation state were doing this? They are. They're nation states doing this. And they're funding smaller organizations. So now in different parts of the world, you effectively have a Silicon Valley of bad actors. You have a Silicon Hills, like we have in Austin, Texas, of bad actors. It's a cottage industry, and these guys are making as much money, if not more, than working in a legitimate organization. They're very focused, they're very sophisticated. We tend to get fat and happy, but they're very hungry. So we just have to go on a diet and get hungry.
We're back. Another awesome episode of The Threat Show with my friend Chris Wilder. A lot's happened in the threat intel world over the last couple of weeks, and a lot's happened in cybersecurity in general in the last couple of weeks, Chris. It's cooking out there.
I'm super happy to be here because I've got a lot of a lot of stuff to get off my chest.
Let's
I
do
mean, the whole recorded future thing, man, that blew me away. I love it. It's good for our industry.
Yeah, 2.8 billion dollars. Like, why such a big outcome? And yeah, why is it so good for our industry?
I think Recorded Future has always been kind of almost an epic company. I mean, they're an iconic company. They kind of brought threat intelligence and understanding not just what's going on the inside, but what's going on the outside. They bring it to the forefront, and I think it's really kind of validating our little niche market that we've been in for a very long time. And we're finally going to get asked to the dance, Grant.
I've been waiting for the day for people to actually realize the power. Now, it's really interesting about threat intelligence. For as long as you've been in the industry, there are people like, oh, well, Recorded Future got bought for so much. I should get into threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is now valuable. But I still think most people are like, they look at the past and they try to repeat it instead of like, wait, we're in a brand new world today. And it's interesting. Like, is threat intelligence actually that valuable for most teams, Chris?
Today, no, because people don't know how to use it. They don't know what
Exactly.
to,
Exactly.
they don't understand. We talked earlier about some of the CVs that we've got today with Versa and things like that. A lot of people just they'll look at it and they'll have like a mini panic, be like, okay, good. And they'll see these things and they'll see things coming, but the thing is they don't see like, oh, how does this apply to me? I've made this investment in all these other tools, but I'm not getting any information about those tools. So it's kind of hit or miss right now. So I think what's happening, especially now what's happening with AI and a lot of the different attack vectors changing there, intelligence can really help to at least help you figure out kind of where your problems are and then how to go fight the bad guys as opposed to just understanding what the bad guys are doing and hope they don't get you. It's a different dynamic. And, I come from not just the threat intelligence world, but the actual intelligence world. And it's knowns, unknowns, and unknowns, unknowns. So you kind of have to understand that the unknowns are the ones that are the most valuable. And now you can start pulling that out. And there's a lot of vendors out there, especially the ones that are doing like Halcyon and Black Fog and the guys that are doing the ransomware side of the world. They've got their own threat intelligence platforms, but they don't monetize it. I think they
Yeah.
should. And there's a lot of other companies out there that they're creating their own telemetry based on what they're seeing. It's really kind of how you can, when I do talk to like some of the ransomware guys, I said, why don't you monetize this data? It's beautiful. And they're kind of starting to, but I think it's really kind of who's going to buy it? In the OSINT world, there's a product out there called Maltego, and it's an open source product. But what it does, it aggregates different threat intelligence feeds, and people can buy them based on what's applicable to their business or their situation or the project or whatever they're working on. Kind of gives you more of a like a GitHub for Intel feeds. I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that coming up, especially also understanding if you can really understand the TTPs, the techniques and the procedures on how they're attacking, where they're attacking, that'll help you a lot in terms of not just where to put your defenses, but also reconcile your portfolio. Do you need a vuln scanner? Do you need this? So it really helps you kind of prioritize your investments in cybersecurity. Like I said, I'm excited. I think it's a wonderful step forward for threat intel people, and I think it's an opportunity for a lot of companies out there. And I hope it continues. I hope we become smarter. And now with AI, well, that throws everything out the window. Yeah, AI and quantum are going to change the whole game. But so, as long as you're smart about what you're going and where you're making your investments, it's really going to be something that is beneficial for us. So,
So it's interesting, Chris. As you talk, you make me think about Levi's.
yeah,
Well, Levi's,
yeah,
they got bought for a lot of money. Now you're gonna have like True Religion, you're gonna have Lucky Brand, you're gonna have all these other jean companies, Paper Denim, and it's like everybody's gonna make another copy of jeans.
yeah.
Sure, the world's gonna have a lot more jeans, and maybe the world's more interested in jeans, but unless you know how to put those jeans on and make them look good, you're just buying jeans. the world's going to fast forward very fast. And raw data is valuable to some people. It's valuable to those who know how to apply it, the big cyber team, some of our buddies. But most people just need to know, like, what can I focus on? What should I do right now? And I do think cyber is really changing. You keep talking about the role of the CIO and the CISO coming together, and they have to work together a lot more now. It's not just about endpoint management anymore or database management or just cloud. Everybody's crazy about cloud, cloud controls and that kind of stuff. And it's really about educating the human factor because AI changes that game. And so, what are some of your thoughts about how the industry is really changing as we get lots of more gene salesmen out there?
Yeah, and CIO is still kind of the big dog in this whole thing because that's all the company information, that's keys to the kingdom, those kinds of things. Then you have your CISO, the CISO who's there to protect it. And then you have the CSO, which is kind of a lot of times it's just the unknown guy in the corner that used to work for the FBI and he's responsible for protecting the executives. That's all converging. Everything is converging. CISOs always had their fiefdoms, CIOs had their fiefdoms, and CSOs had their fiefdoms. Now they're all coming together, especially just because of compliance and the different threats that are out there. I think we talked about the CSO and the CISO combining. I get the acronyms mixed up all the time, but they're merging together and the skill sets have to start overlap, which is a good thing. I do think we're getting into a renaissance that is going to require intelligence coming from all three of these fiefdoms into one, and then being able to cut down the noise and be able to find actionable intelligence, which is what we like, so that they can actually act on it. And AI is going to be a big changer for that because it used to be if I was breached, it would take me about 90 days to figure out if I got breached. And with some of the new tools that are coming out, you're fighting it out a little bit more, but now you're kind of get down to, 3 to 5 days or whatever, but you're still breached. You're still asleep in the park. You're going to wake up in the park, not in your bed. AI actually helps you get to that faster. And so, we're seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 to 90% faster breach identification within an organization using AI. But you have to be able to train the algorithm to go find those breaches. And that's where Intel comes in. So that's where we're going.
It's funny. I like what you're saying. It's about training the algorithm, but it's also training the human to think differently. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, human, let the AI do this busy work, and the AI gives you the tips, the tricks, what to
Oh,
focus on sooner so you can get proactive. I use the term threat forecasting a lot because we're finally in an era where threat forecasting can be more a reality instead of the regimented, the British are coming kind of thing, where it's like, here's my intel and here's my team lining up, here's all my soldiers lining up and they're lining up. And it's like we can finally start getting into this moment where can we rise to the challenge of what is basically guerrilla warfare from the adversary with where we're headed. And it gets me excited for the industry a lot because of the Renaissance moment we're in and the number of people actually carrying who aren't in cybersecurity or IT at all, which is like the executives out there. They actually now care about the conversation and making it so they understand it. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think one of the most incredible intelligence actions that I've ever seen is that crazy pager attack that happened a couple weeks ago in the Middle East. And I keep thinking through the logistics and the planning that goes into how you create that attack. And the guys who were on the receiving end of it, they had no clue. But if they had a little bit more intel and they could see it, yeah, you'd be, we'd be there. But I think that we're seeing more and more sophisticated attacks. They're changing all the time. AI is making them change. Quantum's going to be insane. We've got to be able to keep up with the adversaries, and we're just not doing that. And it's a human factor, and you're right. Because intelligence people tend to think, well, I've got this tradecraft and I know how to use it all day long, but now I've got to use technology and tools to make these decisions. It's not that. It helps you.
The thing is these guys oftentimes are like, well, I'm intelligent. I know this stuff. That's great. You work for one organization, or maybe you're an independent person. The attacks are changing. They're attacking much smaller companies. With AI, you can do things at much larger scale. You can attack that much farther down the supply chain to that big company. That one little part that's made, they don't have the budget or the time for your brain. The world is flattening in a way. And so I love the fact of how much cybersecurity is starting to come into the limelight in that acquisition. Back to our opener, Recorded Future, it really helps bring it into Wall Street. Like, because Wall Street thinks in terms of money. We think in terms of solving problems all the time. They're like, oh, well, there's money here. they start propagating the news about it, it can be quite a self-fulfilling prophecy to make the business care.
Yeah, it's funny because I watch the trends all the time. Last time we got together, I think it was government that was being attacked the most. Now, by a factor of maybe 1x, 1.5x, you're seeing healthcare getting attacked the same way. And the different vectors are changing. Lockbit was the best, the big one last time. Sabit still is, but they're diminishing. There's a couple more that popped up. So we're seeing, new and different attacks that are happening, and a lot of them are being focused on supply chain. That's a topic near and dear to my heart because if you can disrupt a supply chain, you disrupt a business, you can disrupt everything, and that goes to
Absolutely.
TPRM, third party risk management, and it goes to compliance, and it goes to, are my partners patching? Are they doing what they're supposed to do in terms of protecting my information that I give them? Especially in financial services and healthcare and things like that, where it's incredibly regulated industry. There's so many different points and vectors and things like that that we as cybersecurity people in general have to understand more. Sadly, most threat intelligence platforms, it's garbage in, garbage out. Nothing's correlated. You kind of have to depend on the people that use threat intelligence as job security, I guess. I know a lot of those guys, but it's like the one Unix programmer at AT&T. They have to keep him around, even though he's 70 years old.
Yeah.
That's an old Ed story, Ed Amorosa story. But you got to keep that guy around. So that's what they do typically with Intel people and guys like me, salty guys that know stuff. And what they say, youth and skill never beat age and treachery. That's sometimes how we are, and we're starting to have to evolve. And I think that's great. And I see a lot of young men and women that are coming out, both out of the military and coming out of the intelligence world and coming into the security world, in the commercial security world. They've got an intelligence mindset and they understand how to fight the war, which is what we're fighting. And that's going to be a big, big change for a lot of companies.
Well, I think you touched on something interesting. You mentioned the word compliance a few times. You and I love to talk about, no, think secure, be secure first. Stop thinking compliance first. And what's nice about these new folks graduating is they're really thinking that intelligence mindset, as you just said. That intelligent mindset is not necessarily a compliance first mindset. Do your job really well. You'll end up checking all those compliance boxes, get ahead of the threats. You'll end up checking those compliance boxes. And you haven't had that much in the cybersecurity workforce. A lot of the workforce has been check those boxes first. And also, I think back to our conversation about this acquisition, it starts making people think of, well, yeah, my company's bought that kind of intelligence, but we never really used it. Well, we
Mhm.
checked that box for compliance. And so I wonder if we're really at this moment of change. I hope we are. And it's starting to feel like we are as I talk to folks in the community out there and our customers, and it gets me stoked. What do you think is going to really tip the scale when it comes to making people, hey, stop thinking SOC 2 first and start thinking security first? Like, what is it going to take? And I think it's sometime in the next 12 months that it's never going away, but people are like, whoa, I really need to think security first.
I mean, SOC 2 and security first they should be hand in hand. A lot of times they're not. I'm just checking the box of SOC 2 and, oh my God, we just got our biggest PO in the world and we have to get SOC 2 compliant. And then the next person in the company says, what's SOC 2? I mean, that's very typical. And the compliance frameworks are finally starting to catch up with the industry and catch up what companies are doing. And they're actually starting to put practical measures in their frameworks as opposed to some of the things that most companies can't do because they don't have the budget. We're seeing that change. CMMC kind of screwed up a lot of things because people were thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to settle the government, and now I can't." And then I realized it's a very compartmentalized framework. So just a lot of people don't know. But I think from a cybersecurity perspective, first, companies are realizing that number one, I harp on this all the time, is that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. To be able to do that, you have to have number one, the defenses in place, like antivirus, you've got to have ransomware protection, you've got to have the ability for your team, even though they may be accidentally in that role, they could be the receptionist at a small company. They need to understand what the threats coming into that company are. And so everybody needs to know these things and make sure their systems are patched, they're updated, everything, everybody's as protected as you possibly can be. Once you get that done and get these people educated and people are actually looking for this, the next step is, okay, so now and I've got my people done here. Now let me look at my infrastructure. Is
I
my
totally agree with you. They do it the other way around though, and educating those people don't they don't educate them in the moment. So it ends up becoming,
yeah.
yeah, sure. There's people, yeah, sure, yeah, all the time. Yeah, sure, yeah, sure. It's like, no, we need to make them care. And I think the only way to make them care is bring them into the moment. make them feel.
That's funny because one of my
Yeah.
biggest clients is up in Minnesota, and they're like, yeah, sure, okay. So, okie dokie. Yeah. So when you said that, I was like, oh gosh.
It's like, don't assure me. Let's actually like do the job and let's make this something you care about, or let's not. And it's like, I think the only way to make them care about it is to take these things that are near term or about to be near term and involve them and create passion out of them and educate them. It's like, this is going to hit your desk in the next 4 days, most likely, and you're going to be ready. How's that going to feel? Like you're going to help save the company, as opposed to it's good for when it happens for you to know about phishing. It's like, no, there's an attack. It's active. It's coming. And I think that narrative needs to change dramatically. I like what you're just saying about education, and then go on to infrastructure. Sorry, please continue.
And then once you kind of get your team educated and you kind of have, I don't say cyber first in this incident, it's kind of more, do you have your cyber hygiene done? Are you waking up in the morning, you taking a shower, are you brushing your teeth? Or if I had hair, I'd comb my hair, but do you have good hygiene? And that's one of the things about cyber security is that a lot of companies really don't have good cyber hygiene because they're checking the box. And so the next step after you get your people educated is my damn firewall configured right? Probably 70% of the firewalls that I see that I go to, no, they're not. There's big holes in it. And I pen tested two companies last week and I was able to get through their firewall right away. It wasn't a big deal. And one of them I got to the POS, the point of sale systems in their restaurant. Thank God it wasn't mine. But
Hmm.
but it
You buy
was
some burgers, or do they have some champagne on the menu or something? Maybe some expensive whiskey?
I was able to get PII.
Oh,
So
man. Wow. Wow.
yeah, it's a little lake restaurant. They I got some new tools, they got some new toys, which makes me very happy. And I decided I had to go sit in the parking lot and do this. It
That would be kind of a funny TV show, Chris. You know, like that. What is that one where they go into the restaurant and fix the restaurant? It's like it's a cybersecurity TV show where we sit in the parking lot and say, we're gonna take this business. And like we take the business, then we go and show the company. It's like, you don't know cyber. Oh my gosh, dude, we should do this TV show. It would be amazing. People would actually watch it.
nerds would, but
Well, the whole
well,
world would. What's that? Mr. Robot. Everybody loved Mr. Robot. This would be like Mr. Robot, kind of, but real life. And
Producer interrupting, just filling in that thought, the kitchen nightmares, cybersecurity nightmares. It'll
okay.
happen. We'll make it
what's that
happen.
military guy? Oh, I forgot
We'll
who
get
did
Chris in there
the show.
yelling at them.
The guy who did that show on the Food Network is that military guy, Chris. You have the right personality. Oh, I forgot his name. He walks in and it's like, your restaurant's a mess. What are you doing?
Oh, Gordon Ramsay.
No, it's not Gordon Ramsay. It's oh, what's his name? Another really buff military fellow.
I don't know who that is, but I'm okay yelling at people. It's just that's not the way to do it. You can't just strip people down and make them do what you want to do. You want to incentivize them and give them a reason to do the right thing. And that's kind of where we're at with that because our industry has always been kind of a relatively heavily
Yeah,
military.
I know the name of the restaurant show. It's called Restaurant Impossible with Robert Irving. This would be Cybersecurity Impossible with Chris Wilder.
Yeah. But the problem is I'd probably want to get out and go have a beer.
Oh,
So,
all right. So there's been a lot of threats. Since over the last couple of weeks since we got together, the market has dramatically changed. The landscape's dramatically changed. In fact, the threats that we talked about on our last show are basically not even top of the list anymore. They're not even close. We talked about Chameleon. We talked about CV 2024 7950. We're starting to see very new things pop in right now. And we're starting to see if people are doing their homework right, they're already taken care of on those threats. And the adversaries have moved on to some pretty interesting things. Like you and I were talking before the show about the Versa
yeah,
threats out there.
that was a pretty critical vulnerability. I hate to see cybersecurity companies get hit or have vulnerabilities in what they do, especially zero trust style companies and SASE companies, which is edge security. That tells me more about kind of where the bad guys are focusing their attention. And at the edge is really hard to keep those systems patched up and running, updated, those types of things. Last time we went through the top CVEs were very much kind of open source agile type vulnerabilities. This week there's three CVEs that are just focused on hardware. There's an email gateway, and then we've got the
Yeah,
Versa.
CV 9043 email gateway to sell points, right?
Yeah, and then this latest one is effectively their hypervisor, which is kind of how they orchestrate all of the communications for the edge systems. And that's a big one. If you can affect that one, it's like part of the reason why VMware had a hard time because their hypervisors got attacked. And so now there's a whole group of folks that are coming back and they're trying to quickly as they possibly can come up with Linux-based. We never thought about that.
Total sense when you think about it. It's a choke point. It makes total sense. If I was an adversary, that's something I'd be looking at.
Yeah. I was telling my wife the other day, she's over at a large company in Cupertino that makes cell phones and laptops. I was saying, Darian and we had the CV Olympics, who's going to get hit more with 0-day attacks? Is it iOS or is it Android? And now we're seeing kind of this uptick in iOS, which is Unix-based, seeing an uptick in Unix-based attacks, which is, something that had really never been, people thought, well, we're using Linux, we're using Unix, it's secure. And now they're finding it's as vulnerable as anything else. Just looking at the top ones that came out of Fletch, they're very focused. You have to be sophisticated to get into it, but it's also very focused on a device, or it's focused on a specific area of a network, which in my opinion, that means that the tactics are becoming more and more nation state style attacks as opposed to just bad actors.
I totally believe right now we're seeing such an uptick. Putin must be really mad, right? Because we're seeing a huge uptick from Russia. We're seeing a huge uptick from North Korea. China's always there, right? This one UNC 2970 is fascinating right now because, of course, energy and aerospace is what hit like tens of thousands of times a day. Bots try to hit their infra in all sorts of ways. But this goes back to AI, and it's creating like fake job posts and it lures these people in to like go to apply for a job, and it delivers through the Sumatra PDF, a Trojanized. It's just really well done. This Trojanized delivery of a backdoor, and the way they're going about this is totally something you can scale with AI, and it's all about social engineering. And it's all about, back to what you said a few minutes ago, we got to educate the people who are not the IT and cybersecurity people. And something like this, I think you start sharing this with the whole organization, you make that tiny little part for the aerospace device, it actually can be spun into such an interesting story. North Korea is going to start intriguing you with jobs, and it's going to sound like a really cool job. Another manufacturer down the street, and they're going to start talking to you, and it's going to be somebody with a perfect accent. So you're going to think they're right here in the South. But guess what? They're not. And it's just like, it's so well executed these days. We have to get people educated.
I used to work with a lot of the big Indian outsourcers, the big respectable ones, Tata, Infosys, HCL, those guys. And they would send their call center employees to classes on learning how to speak like an American. So parlay that into something, okay, so you leave that organization, where do you go next? So maybe go become a scammer.
I actually have a friend working on an AI that, I kid you not, for call centers to make your voice sound, you could have any sort of accent. It gets rid of the accent in your voice. Make your voice sound like the perfect Southerner in America. And they're selling this product. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, this guy's just down the street. He's in Baton Rouge. It's like, huh.
I'll take a call from a Sam Elliott any day.
Yeah, you think it's Sam Elliott, but it's some guy in North Korea.
Morgan Freeman, yeah.
So
the world's changing.
It is, and we've got to understand, because it's kind of morphing into a lot of deep fakes have become a big problem. And it's not just changing pictures of somebody, it's now voices, it's personalities, it's how they speak and things that they know about you, and augmenting that with AI, putting in a personal profile and be able to interact with you as Morgan Freeman, Sam Elliott, Ronald Reagan, whomever. Scammers are the first ones who jump on it. We're always playing defense.
So easy to be a bad guy, and it's getting even easier.
Yeah, and watching the news and watching what's going on in the world, because I kind of have to do that. I have to take my pill every day for that. But it's one of those things where they're talking about all these different attacks, cyber attacks, things like that. And, oh my God, what would happen if a nation state were doing this, or if the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians or whomever? They are. They're nation states doing this, and they're funding smaller organizations. So now in different parts of the world, you effectively have a Silicon Valley of bad actors. You have a Silicon Hills, like we have in Austin, Texas, of bad actors. It's a cottage industry, and these guys are making as much money, if not more, than working in a legitimate organization. They're very focused. They're very sophisticated. And these guys are just as good as a lot of the guys that, the Five Eyes have in terms of intelligence perspective. And so we tend to get fat and happy, but they're very hungry. So we just have to go on a diet and get hungry. All the intelligence agencies that I work with and everybody that I know that are in the fight right now, They're doing an amazing job and they're doing the best they can. And they've got very, very sophisticated tools, and we've got advantage on them on the tools. But these guys live and breathe it, and they sit there all day long, and they're looking for new ways to go, and that's where AI is helping them.
Total warfare for them.
Yeah, when you're using AI in an attack, you can change your tactics like within seconds. And so we're going to see a lot more really bad AI-driven botnet attacks. And we're already seeing the fruits of that labor because they just go out and it's like the Borg. It's Star Trek, the Borg assimilates. This is what they're doing, and that's what you can train AI to do. Quantum's a whole different game. We can do it.
So you and I talk a lot about our friends at bigger organizations. We have good tools, that kind of stuff. I spend a lot of my life with Fletch where I'm spending time with people who are not at the big organizations. I'm spending time with people that are at the 500 person company. And a lot of these companies rely on Microsoft tooling, the biggest security vendor out there, Microsoft. And they rely on Microsoft Defender. And one of the biggest things I find with these folks is the state of the art of their tools is basically the Microsoft suite. How do we help them when the number one problem in the Microsoft Defender world is alert fatigue? They have no clue what to focus on. And it goes back to like helping focus them, helping teach them, helping them be the shepherds for their organization. I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about like, how do we make the Microsoft ecosystem better? Because that is where 90% of the audience is. That's where people live. Yet the best, a lot of the guys over here, we've been talking about in that 10%. How do we help this 90%? Think about all the shops that you've worked with that are like very Microsoft Defender focused.
Most employees in companies that are 500 or below, or 500, to 5,000, tend to kind of have either an ad hoc security organization or they have accidental people that are doing cybersecurity. And Microsoft Defender is great. It works incredibly well for people to understand. We talked about this earlier. There's the known knowns, the known unknowns, and then there's the unknowns unknowns. And it's really good about helping companies to understand the known knowns. So what is, that's what's out there, and it does that automatically for you, and you're good to go. Defender does not help you with the unknown unknowns or the known unknowns. So it doesn't help you with really kind of getting into it unless you really know how to use it, because a lot of people fire and forget. I mean, remember buying a Windows laptop years ago, and it always comes with either Norton or McAfee, and all you have to do is pay for it, and it keeps it updated, and you don't, supposedly not getting any viruses.
The illusion of safety for a lot of these companies is real. They say, well, I run the Microsoft suite, I'm safe. Are you even triaging those alerts? Occasionally, I make sure to keep my Microsoft up to date. It's like, yeah, you're probably leaving a lot of holes. Back to that company that you were talking about a minute ago. You were in their POS in minutes. It's like,
I won't tell you what we did to a casino many years ago.
there's something that were you there with Danny Ocean?
It was kind of like that, but it was I don't know if I can really talk too much about it, but
don't worry about it. Let's go back to this topic. I'm really trying to figure out how we help our friends out there. But like, for instance, the North Korea one is a really good one. It would never show up in Microsoft Defender.
No, it won't.
You make parts of the aerospace world. It's like, that's something you should be educated on. You should be educating your people on it, because they're going to be socially engineered, targeted with that kind of like job outreach. Like, this is a world that's changing. You can't just depend on the endpoint thing you're running.
Well, and that is relevant to this. The casino story is actually very relevant. And
all right, let's hear it.
I had a group of hackers and crackers. We were working on a casino someplace in the world that's not Las Vegas. We got in there a day early. My guys were bored, and we were getting ready to set up the exercise for Monday. We're just going to do a full-on pen test. What happens when nerds get bored, they get creative. These guys were able to get all the way into the casino, open up all the doors, deactivated all the key fobs. They went through the port in the TV, because they knew if you put security and you put access controls on a TV, it's going to slow down the quality of the picture. So they knew there was nothing between there and that server was connected to the rest of the entire environment. So they were able to get to the POS, they were able to open up the cache drawers, they were able to deactivate all the key fobs, and they did it in 11 minutes. And it was a brutal attack. And we obviously called them up and said, we're done. You'll get our report in 2 weeks. But it was, 11 minutes to take over an entire casino using a TV. These are the things that organizations don't understand, that they will find other channels to get into your organization. Defender is good for, like I said, the known knowns. It'll do everything you need it to do that will defend that particular network or that particular device. But when it comes to the overall hygiene and the whole broad factor of the organization, it doesn't go out there and doesn't find those other vulnerabilities. And it just takes one or two good, smart, creative attackers to be able to change that. And so the mindset that people have is, well, I've got Defender, I've got this, I've got that. I've spent all this money on it. I should be protected, but I'm not. It's a holistic approach that a lot of organizations don't adopt. And this is where what you and I talk a lot about, Grant. A lot of companies are reactive and they need to go to proactive cybersecurity. And that's, I love Defender. I absolutely love it. I think Microsoft has built a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Sentinel. I think is a wonderful product, and they're doing a wonderful job of going after Splunk and from a SIM side. But the problem is you're just like, oh, I've got a Band-Aid, so I'm not going to get an infection and they're not going to cut my arm off. It's that mentality with a lot of companies, and we've got to change that. I guess that's the thesis of my story. It's a very long story that came around. I just wish that companies had a different mindset. And I think that if you understand what you've got in front of you and you can deal with that, then there's the unknowns, the known unknowns. Okay, these are things we probably need to deal with, which was like known unknowns, our CVEs, and how do I patch those systems and all that fun stuff. Then the unknown unknowns are the things like, who are the bad actors trying to get me? And what are they doing and how are they doing it? So that I can say, for example, if I have somebody that's coming in with PowerShell, Log4j was a wonderful example of this, that companies are like, oh, crud, we've got to deal with our databases and all of our Java servers could be potentially compromised. So, oh my God, we have 30,000 Java servers. It's big companies and small companies, maybe not. They don't even know what Log4j is. That's the dynamics of where the world is right now. I haven't seen a lot of companies out there trying to change that behavior. They're changing the tech. Good God, they're changing the tech. It's changed today. And a lot of cybersecurity companies right now, if I were a VP of marketing in a cybersecurity company, I could say we're marketing pink elephants, and all the other competitors in my industry say, well, we got pink elephants too. That's the way the industry is going. It was kind of very much like what happened with CRM, is everybody had the same functionality, did the same damn thing, but the way that they marketed it was different. Now we're kind of moving into this, we're marketing differently, as opposed to actually doing a very end-to-end approach on how we protect an organization. We've got to get there, and we're not.
I agree with you more.
Even the big companies, they're throwing money at problems that they think they have because they're told that they have this problem. And go back to your point, Grant, is check the box from a compliance perspective. Small companies buy what they need to because they don't know any better. We're kind of an influx, I think, in the industry. And I think it's good because there's going to be an emergence of companies that come up, and the companies that come up are really going to be able to help these organizations are going to be the ones that they're going to succeed. Platform guys are really getting a lot of attention. Their revenue's still pretty strong, like Palo, Fortinet, those guys. They're doing great because of the fact that they sell platforms. And it's like, well, just buy this and spend the $3-4 million with us and we'll be able to help you. And then there's the MSSPs or the MSPs that are trying to become MSSPs, with the managed service providers and the ITO guys that want to become managed security service providers. They're working with some of the other niche vendors like you guys and some of the Black Fogs and some of the other folks, Notarity. And so they're really trying to get into this, but they don't have the ability to really educate their customers about how to get over this hump. And so it's nothing is contextual. It's just we can make your problem go away.
But that's what we're here for with the Threat Show, man. That's why we're doing it again. So we're here to educate. I hope people are listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed all this. We went really, really long today, Chris. Folks, to be continued. Chris, it wasn't exactly a natural stopping point, but like a good Star Trek episode and the Borg is attacking, the Borg is just starting to attack. Stay tuned. Is he Locutus a Borg, or is he John Luke? Thank you so much for being with me, Chris. Today's has been awesome. And folks, we will continue.
I love to do this. And Jake, thank you so much for all your help too. And so just keep up the good work and let's fight the fight.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.